Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make some beaded epaulettes. They're pretty unique, but I really like how it looks, so I decided I was going to make myself some, and of course teach you guys how to make it yourself. You can make them removable, like the ones I'm going to be making today, so that you can remove them and reattach them to different articles of clothing that you have, making them a lot more versatile. So let's get started. You'll need some heavy fabric. The stuff I'm using is some type of faux leather kind of stuff. The printed pattern. I'll leave a link for this particular one down below. Optionally, you could totally just do whatever design you want. Sewing or embroidery transfer paper, a ballpoint pen, pin backs, beads, chain, dangly charms if you want that sort of thing, scissors, thread, an embroidery needle, and pliers. Lay your fabric out, place the transfer paper on top with the front facing the fabric, and then put the printed pattern on top. Make sure you leave about 1/4 to 1/2 inch space around each side of the pattern. Trace the lines with your ballpoint pen. And repeat for the second piece. Now cut them out about 1/4 to 1/2 inch away from the pattern. I did mine pretty close together. I figured out the hard way that it makes it a lot easier to sew the beads on if you have a little bit of extra fabric to hold on to while you embroider. First things first, make sure you have an embroidery needle. This project was actually the first time that I ever used one. I would always just try to string those tiny glass beads onto normal sewing needles, and half the time they don't fit. So this time I finally got the proper tool. These things are very thin and have quite a large hole in the middle, but it's only open if you spread the needle open, like this. It makes it super easy to thread the needle, and then when you let it close back up, the metal squeezes onto the thread and it helps it stay pretty secure. It was actually pretty nice. The only thing you have to look out for though is that both sides are very sharp, so be wary of that while you're embroidering. And now just embroider the piece however you'd like. I'm self-taught, so I'm not sure if the way I do this stuff is correct, but it's been working for me so far, so I've just stuck with that. If you guys notice any glaring mistakes, then please let me know so I can learn. Anyway, I started off by sewing some clear glass beads around the outline of most of the design. The way that I embroidered the outlines was I strung 3 beads on and then stuck the needle through the fabric, pulled the thread through and the beads tight up against the line of the pattern. Then I poked the needle through the fabric between the first and second bead and pulled through. Then I stuck the needle back through the last 2 beads and pulled tight. Then I repeated the process by threading 3 more beads on, sewing back through the fabric, sewing back up between that first and second bead of that cluster, threaded it through the last 2 beads, and pulled through. Then I repeated this process again and again and again until I had it all outlined. Then I just filled in the pattern with different beads. For the leaves, I used long beads and sewed them one by one so they kind of mimic the veins of a leaf. On the bigger petal type things, I did a mixture of the long beads with the tiny seed beads. Really, you can do anything here. I looked at a lot of inspiration beaded embroidery online before I started actually sewing stuff onto mine. If you don't want to bother with doing all of this hand beaded embroidery, you could totally just buy a few beaded embroidery appliques and sew those down onto a piece of fabric cut to size. Once I had both of the pieces embroidered, I cut the extra fabric off. Make sure you don't accidentally cut any thread. The pattern that I had transferred earlier ended up rubbing off a lot, so you could barely see the lines at this point, but I could see them just enough to cut it still. If yours rubbed off too much, you could take the original printed pattern and cut it out and place it over the embroidery and trace around it to get the shape that you need to cut. And now to finish the edge. Using the same technique as the outline, sew a line of beads around the edge. I used black beads because they didn't distract too much away from the beaded embroidery, but it still gave it that nice clean look. Take some chain and lay out how much you want to be draping down. I wanted them to hang pretty far, so I cut a pretty long piece. Cut another piece of the same type of chain to this exact length, so you have a matching piece for the other shoulder piece. Repeat this process for the other pieces of chain. Once you have all the chains you want and where you want, sew them onto the edge of the fabric. If you want, you can add charms to some of the chain. I had this spiky bead thing that I added to the smallest chain. Now sew on the pin backs onto the epaulette, one in the middle at the top, and one on each side, about halfway down. Repeat for the other one, and you're done. Now just pin it onto the shoulder of whatever piece of clothes you want to accessorize. And there you go. I hope you all enjoyed this project. If you did, please leave a like. If you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. I post DIY videos every Thursday. You can follow me on Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, or Pinterest, and I'll leave the information to those down below. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next week.